thank you so much for being with us tonight. I am so glad that you're here. Tonight, you're going to see a missionary interview, and he's going to share with us what God did in his heart to make it possible for him to go to the mission field. Tonight, you're going to meet Brother Josh Wagar, and he's going to join us now, and you're going to enjoy this evening. God bless you for being here. Brother Josh Wagar, thank you for joining us tonight, all the way from Chuuk, Micronesia. This is amazing to me. And you get to be here with our guests and people who are watching. Now, folks, if you have questions tonight, I want you to put those in the comments. And Josh and Sarah, they're going to come in after this is after our time here, and they're going to come in and they're going to answer your questions, and you can direct message them as well. But I promise you, you will find wonderful help and instruction tonight as we just learn more about Micronesia, where it is, what's happening in Josh and Sarah's lives. And so we'll start tonight with a simple question. Well, I say it's simple. I don't have to answer it. But Brother Josh, how did you know that God wanted you to serve him in Chuuk, Micronesia?
So, since I was fairly young, I even remember back in probably third or fourth grade, kind of having this idea of going to Australia, right, as a missionary, and that's just always something that's been on my heart. And got a little bit older, and becoming a preacher wasn't quite as cool as becoming an army doctor or something like that, and so lost sight for a little while, and yet could never get away from the call of preaching and being in the ministry somewhere. And so the Lord moved my family to Oahu, Hawaii, and it was during that time I was going to a small school on one side of the island, and there were some Chuukese kids that were in the school. And then the church that we were attending, Ohana Baptist Church, within the church as a whole, there was a separate Chuukese congregation. And so we had all the Chuukese kids in the youth group, and just so I grew up. My teenage years were around Chuukese people and Chuukese kids, and I didn't know much about it really at all. They just kind of blended in, and I mean it was island life, so we were kind of used to it.
Sure.
But I never really thought that would come back to anything. We moved back to Virginia and finished up my last couple of high school years. And I knew that God was calling me into missions specifically, and I thought I was heading back to Hawaii. There's still a great need there for some things to be done. So got to college, and I was starting to really focus in on just becoming a missionary, and we started attending this church called Every Nation Baptist Church. So if you guys are watching, hello. And that was really some of the most formative time in my life, was being part of that church, and started working with a group of people from Nepal. And they were refugees. They're Bhutanese refugees from Nepal that came here. And so God really started to use that ministry, and I really started thinking, okay, Nepal is maybe where it's at. And Sarah, my wife, and I were dating at the time, and we just, that kind of seemed to be where it was leading. And then, just to be quite honest, I don't even know where Micronesia came back up at. I really can't remember, but I just remember Micronesia kind of being in my head. And so it really came down to Nepal or Micronesia, and I really agonized over it. It was a pretty intensive time in my life. I think it was about my sophomore year of college, and just really agonized over it. And I got to the point, I said, God, you got to show me like where you want us at. And it was during a missions conference at the college that the keynote speaker, and I don't want to make it sound like I just kind of live my life by, signs that God might give, but I thought it was interesting. The keynote speaker was Dalton Heath, who was one of the kind of the big main missionaries that was in Micronesia for quite a while. And I thought, well, okay. And so through that and just some answers to prayer and a peace, Micronesia was where it was at. I was like, okay, but I had no idea the difference. I didn't know that Micronesia was a region that was made up of multiple countries. I didn't know that the FSM was made up of 4 states that were complete. Micronesia, that's all I knew. Well, our pastor from Hawaii, Pastor Surface, came and preached at the college for a few days, and I told him, I said, Pastor Surface, uh, you know, God has called me to Micronesia, and this is what we're doing. I'm excited. And I remember driving home with him. I was in the car with him, and he said something about, you really need to look at Chuuk. Chuuk is really, and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know the difference, but okay, yes, sir. And from there, God just really used that time to hone in that Chuuk was the place. And yeah, that's long and short of it. Sarah and I were dating, and she was like, "If you're in, I'm in." So here we are. Here we are today. So,
Amen. Joshua, something that stood out to me in what you just said and stood out strongly to me is God used a missions conference to touch your heart. And I think about
hmm
all of these folks who are watching, and sometimes missions conference isn't the best attended meeting. It may not be the
hmm
most popular meeting, but boy, did God use that, and your whole course and life changed. Well, how did God finalize things with you and Sarah?
meaning,
Yeah,
like, how did he finalize
yeah. I
us
mean,
coming into?
you just kept saying girlfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend. We need to know the
Uh,
rest of the story, buddy.
I don't know when she watches this. I'm not sure, but I always tell her it's because I had a convertible when we first met. But I know that's not really what it was at all. But we attended the same church. There's really very few of us from the college that went to Every Nation, and it was a brand new church plant. And so, I mean, when I say we did everything, we did everything. I was the guy in the church that had a truck,
Right.
as well. After a little while, I had a truck. So, I mean, we were hauling chairs, we were setting up signs, we were just everything. It was just insane. I don't even know how we did all of it when I look back. And so, kind of being in the forged in the fire of ministry together, I guess you
Mm.
can say, kind of knit our hearts together. And it was just as we got to know each other, we kind of were like, wow, all right. And then time went on, and we began dating. I think somewhere around December of 2009, and God just from there, we kind of went into it knowing. I mean, unless something drastic changes, we kind of just knew. And I know that's not everybody's story, but we just
Right.
kind of knew we were right for each other, and we got married. She graduated with an associate's degree, and we got married in between my junior and senior year of college, and so that was in 2012. And I'm grateful for that. I look back and I think, man, we're babies. I look at people now that are getting married. I'm like, oh, you guys are so. And I'm
Yeah.
like, man, I was younger than them when I got married,
Sure.
and but I'm grateful for it because it kind of set us up to be able to do things in life earlier. And again, that's not God's plan for everybody, but for us, by getting married in between college years, it gave us a year, really a difficult year of college and work and all of this to kind of like get the marriage solid. And then after that, we were kind of ready to like hit it. We were just ready to go,
Sure.
and got involved in work. So that's kind of, yeah. I married an amazing woman. So she
Yeah.
really is my better, like, 7/8, not
There
just my
you
better
go.
half. So,
Sure.
so
Well, Josh, I know this, but maybe the majority of people who are watching don't know this. Sarah came with missionary experience as well, didn't she?
yeah, yeah. That it's interesting. Since we're talking about how we ended up getting to Micronesia, I'll just kind of go on, I guess, with the story if we have a few minutes. But she did. She came with missionary experience from Spain. She moved to Spain when she was around 11 or 12, and spent, other than a short furlough, really spent the rest of her years until college in Spain. So that was very formative. And so she grew up with the ministry mindset, but and I can tell part of her story as well. She when she got to Spain, she was pretty frustrated and was not enjoying life, and she ended up getting saved. But it still took a long time for her to be surrendered, really, to the Lord. And God used Brother Bonikowski, who's a missionary with our agency, and through the missionary teen retreat, God really used that in her life to just bring her to a point of saying, whatever you want, I'll do. And so it was kind of through that she actually ended up at Bible college, and she had other plans, and then she met this debonair young man, and no, it wasn't that, but she had other plans, and God used college to kind of just get her to say whatever you want, and so that's how we ended up there. And that missionary experience is really different though, because she grew up in Europe, and for those of you that might not know, Micronesia is not Europe by any stretch
Sure.
of the imagination. And so when we got out here, we came on a survey trip in 2013, and we had about 2.5 weeks or so, maybe 3 weeks planned to be here, and we ended up staying in this rat hole of a place. And that's just what we had, and we got the true Micronesian experience, when it came to that, and just in the living conditions there, we weren't used to it, and we had all these things planned, and we had kind of set up. There's a local pastor here who we're now working with, but we had all these things set up. He said, "Yeah, I'll help you. I'll help you do all those." And we had a big list. And we're like, "Yeah, this will take us, 2 weeks, and we're going to explore." I think in a matter of about 2 days, we had everything done on the list, and we had the rest of the time. And Pastor Mike works at the college, and getting around here is, you got to be really careful. Plus, it's like a 5 square mile island, so it's not like there's a ton of stuff to do. So we were about ready to pack up, quit, and just say, Chuuk is not for us. Like, this is not it. We did not enjoy it. We did not like it. We were like, I don't know if this is where we're really called. And we had a lot of time to sit and think and pray, and God reminded us of the story of Jonah. And Jonah didn't want to go where he was called, but he ended up going kind of because there was no other option. And we said, well, we don't want to be a Jonah. And so we just kind of said, okay. And that didn't make everything better. It didn't make it where we're like jumping up and down, like, yes, this is our life forever. But now this is home. We can't imagine anywhere else. We love it. It definitely has its challenges, but we almost didn't come here. And yet God specifically worked and brought us back, and we're really grateful for it.
Josh, hearing you tell your story afresh to me, and I first met you early on, and then through this journey where you are now, it just amazes me of how great God is. Of any girl that was going to college at that time, God connected you with Sarah. And at any hardship that you have faced since then, God's given you the perfect helpmeet. She's an incredibly strong woman, and she loves the Lord, and she follows her husband. And those are incredible traits. But Josh, when you look at ministry and the challenges that you face there, it's not an easy place where you are. I know people would think, oh, Micronesia, Pacific Island, and there's probably coconuts everywhere, and you just sit back and just sit under the palm tree, and people come to you and they get saved left and right, and they get this fanciful notion of what it is. But when you look at ministry and the challenges you face, Josh, what keeps you there?
It's a good question, and we kind of had to sit and think for a minute. First of all, what keeps us here is really the need, and I don't say that from a savior mentality. I know good and well that Sarah and I really don't have necessarily the right, like, we don't have the ability to just come in and do a bunch of things. We don't have this deep background of knowledge or ministry or ability or whatever, but the need here is great, and there's very few people to fill that need. So the need keeps us here on the hard days. And then, just to be honest, I hope people understand my heart when I say this. God gives personalities to everybody, and my wife and I complement each other very well. But in that what I'm lacking, she has, or what she's lacking, I have. But one thing that we both have is just a stubborn will. Like, we just don't give up. And that's not a brag. Like, that's from the Lord. Because if He hadn't have given us that, we would have been gone in the first 6 months, I think. Like, I mean, truly. But we just kind of have this bulldog mentality of this is where God called us to be, and we can either kind of just grind it out and do it. And Proverbs 16:3 for me is, I love it. It's commit your works to the Lord, and then your thoughts will be established. And that's just something we've had to learn: is get up, do the work, meet the needs, and then, oh, you know what? We do want to be here.
Yeah.
God does want us here. And it's amazing. And that's a battle that we constantly face. But the thing that keeps us here is just the calling of God, the needs that need to be here, and the stubbornness He's given to us. We're not going to leave unless we're wrestled away from it, or God very clearly tells us to go elsewhere. So.
Josh, hearing you say that, it reminds me of many people's stories that God uniquely wires someone's heart for where He's called them. And you could look at the Apostle Paul, and he finally just blurts out and says, I've learned in whatsoever state I'm in therewith to be content. And that's a game changer when a servant of the Lord comes up with that that's their mindset, it's their heartbeat. And they say, we're just going to stick it out. And thankfully, because of stubbornness or sheer grit, you choose to stay there. And it's not been without its challenges, and it's not been without its hardships. But you all are doing admirably, and the Lord is honored by your work that you're there. Both of you come from great parents. I know your parents better than I do Sarah's, but incredible investments they've made in your lives to get you to serve the Lord. And then you just picked it up and rolled on, and God just moved in a powerful way. Well, Josh, this question is a very broad-scoped question, but when you look back from your first day until now, what tasks remain for you to complete? What is on God's horizon for you in Chuuk?
It's a really great question, and it's one that made me think, but also kind of made me excited. In one way, our goals for the first term are kind of coming to fruition, so let me first give you the geography of Chuuk, and I know that's a weird way to start the answer,
it
but
helps.
Chuuk is not okay. Chuuk is not one island. Chuuk is 40 to 50 inhabited islands that are spread out over hundreds and hundreds of square miles. But if you were to squish all of those islands together, you would only have about 50 square miles of land. So for reference, that's like tons and tons smaller than the state of Rhode Island, which is our smallest state. And so we're minuscule, but we're spread out. And then on top of that, each region, there's 5 regions in Chuuk, 5 sections, if you will. You can almost say it's like a county. Mm-hmm. And each region kind of has its own flavor. And even within Chuuk, there's kind of sometimes these prejudices that come up between between regions. And so I say all that to say we came out here knowing that it wasn't a 5-year or 10-year job. Like, we came out here knowing it's a long haul thing, and it's going to take, a lot of work. So most of our long-term goals still remain unaccomplished, mm-hmm. Which we fully expected. Kind of the first goal that we have, our first long-term goal, is to get at least one kind of like mother church planted in each region. So that'd be 5 churches. And if you're curious to know, there's Northern Nomaneas, which is where we live at. So we already have a church here, obviously, that we're working in conjunction with. But this is the most populated region, so we need more, right, than just the one. There's a couple of good churches here on this island, but still need more even on this island because it's very difficult terrain. Then there's Southern Nomaneas, which is directly, it's a 30-minute boat ride underneath of us. And I've been to a couple of those islands, and there's starting to be some area that we can maybe get into. There's Chuuk, which is like the Wild West of Chuuk, and so it's the roughest terrain probably, and also there's just extra challenges that come with there. Then there's the Northwest Islands, which are also called the Hall Islands, and they're kind of the most traditional. They blend into Yap, and so they end up getting really traditional, and they're really set in their ways, which is cool. But that's a hard place to get up to. It's so far away.
Right.
And then there's the Mortlocks, which actually kind of has three regions in and of itself. But the Mortlocks is kind of like the happy-go-lucky region. That's at least how I think about it. And that's where our pastor is from. And so we want to get churches in each of the regions. And then eventually, as much as possible, we want to see churches planted on each island. And that kind of depends. I mean, some islands you can literally, especially in the Mortlocks, you can walk between islands, and so we want to get churches accessible to everybody, I guess you could say.
Sure.
And Chuuk is a really religious climate, but in that they're religious in the fact that everybody knows kind of the right answer, but I shouldn't say everybody, but many people's hearts are turned off to the truth of the gospel. Because they're very set in the ways. And then this next generation coming up, I would say is even, it's a weird thing. We're so influenced by the West, and yet there's still so much island culture here, so much tradition. It's almost like this generation coming up is shunning the religious aspect of Western culture and embracing the secular aspect, but also kind of remaining traditional. In that some are going back to black magic and things like that. So it's this weird hybrid. We're trying to figure out how to maneuver in it. Anyway, that's a lot that I didn't mean to bring up there. But I say all that to say our goals are to still see churches planted and training folks, getting people out. We have kind of this goal to get this team where we can Micronesians function within a family society. Mm-hmm. It's a group society. So to pull a Micronesian family out of their family and make them different, right? Now you're a pastor. Now you're against your family's. They would think they're against their family's religion.
Right.
That devastates. And that's part of the hard part of having folks continue on in the ministry. So our goal is to create a space where they truly feel that this is now their, obviously not getting rid of their blood family, but a family that will support them. And so when they're out planting a church, if they're tired or discouraged, they come back and another couple goes. Yes. And we just keep it rotating so that there's always this fresh. Here, you can't do things apart from a group. It just is not going to work. And so to have a group that's actually doing it, that's what we're trying to build to begin with. Because we can't do it by ourselves.
Sure.
And we can't get one or two Micronesian couples to do it. It's got to be a group. And so that's the long-term goals. But other than that, right now, our first term goals, helping out the church that we're in, Grace International Baptist Church. And I think we're doing that fairly well. Learning Chuukese, we're doing that fairly well. And then spotting out and doing some reconnaissance work, I guess, if you say, and figuring out where the next things are at. We've got two possible church plant areas right now that we're working on the same island, but because they're so distant if you don't have a car. And so Chuuk and Sapuk, and we're getting ready to start up a Bible study, Lord willing, in Sapuk. So lots going on, like a ton going on. But yeah, that's a lot to be done still, but a lot that we've seen God accomplish as well.
You know, Josh, you're speaking to thousands of people tonight, and they're listening to you. And they're wondering, could God use me on Chuuk? Would you talk to their heart for a minute?
Oh yeah, man, thanks for this opportunity, because I'm itching to call out. All right, for anybody listening, I'm just going to completely get real with you here for a minute. I mean, we've already been real with you, but I want to talk to you.
Right there.
We need people in Chuuk. We just do. But we don't need, well, we want church planters, but we don't need you to be equipped to preach and do these things. Here's what we need in Chuuk. We need doctors that are willing to come out here and not work for a big paycheck, that are willing to just get involved, be part of a church plant, and yet also be willing to treat people and help people out. We need guys that know how to work on cars. We've got mechanics around here and stuff, but we need more. We need these faithful people that are going to be out here. We need tech people that can come out, get involved in a church plant, and also run an online business so that they can teach the Chuukese people how to do these things, graphic design, online businesses. Our internet is getting better, but the jobs are so limited here. We need business people, nurses, doctors, mechanics. We need all of them to come out here, not to feel led to preach or like they have to be the leadership of the church, but to be willing to get involved, to help the church plants, show that we're here for the long term, to reach every aspect of life. Christ went out and he met needs while he preached the gospel. And my wife and I, as much as we try to do that, and there's things that we are able to do, we're not medical people when it comes down to it. Like, I can't fix broken arms or birth babies or whatever. I tinker, I can build, I can work, I can do that, but I'm not a professional at any of that. We need guys that will be full-time businessmen or whatever coming out here and yet involved with the church. Maybe you want to help with the kids' ministry. Maybe you want to be faithful in the church, but that's what we need. And yeah, we also need some preachers and teachers and missionaries, traditional sense. So anybody listening, if you think, I don't know where I should go, come out here for a year. We'll take care of you, and we want you here. And then maybe God will call you to be here for a little bit longer. So,
Josh, I can't think of a better way to bring this to a conclusion tonight. Friends, I want you to drop your questions into the comment section, and Josh and Sarah will be all over that, and they'll be able to answer your questions. Josh, there's one more thing I want to ask you tonight. You do a podcast. Now, for some of my viewers, they're all over podcasts. They get it. Other viewers are going to say, what's a podcast? I don't have a pod where I'm going to throw it to. And so a podcast, think of it as a recorded radio program. So Josh is doing that. Mm-hmm. And on the screen, you'll see at Micro Missions. Now, that's on Facebook. So all you have to do is go to Facebook, click the search button, type in the @ symbol, which is Shift 3 on an American keyboard, and then type the word Micro Missions, all one word, and you'll be able to see this podcast. You'll be able to listen to it. Josh, tell us about what you do on Micro Missions.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah. So what we do is, who doesn't like a missionary story, right? I mean, growing up, some of the best parts of Vacation Bible School or Sunday School or whatever was, hearing about Mary Slessor and Amy Carmichael and Adoniram Judson. Why? Because we're so enthralled that God takes regular people and uses them to change a nation or a movement, So that's what we seek to do. I have a short podcast called the Missionary Micro Stories Podcast. And it's supposed to only be about 9 minutes, but it often goes a little over that. I know how hard that is to keep it that short. But it is a short podcast. And we've got missionaries from all over the world. And I mean that. We've had them from Micronesia, Africa, the Arctic North, Europe, all over the world. And they come on and they just tell us a little bit about who they are and what they're doing. And then they tell us one of their favorite stories about serving in missions. We've had some awesome stories. And so I'd encourage you to check that out. You can find it at Micro Missions. That's our ministry page, and all of the audio gets uploaded to that. And then you can also search for Missionary Micro Stories, and you'll find it.
Yeah. Josh, what I love about your podcast is most people tell stories of what God used to do. And we cherish those stories. We herald those stories. But what you're doing is you tell what God's doing right now with living people and normal people, and not these people who are just elevated to a place. I mean, I've been on the podcast. It's wonderful. Staff here listens to it. They look forward to it. We have a staff member that podcasts weren't her thing, but when you started this, it became her thing. And so it's just a wonderful thing that what you're doing. And Josh, I want you to know that tonight, as you share this information with us and you just poured your heart out, that it matters and you matter. You and Sarah and your daughter matter to God. And what you're doing to serve Christ is making the difference for the sake of eternity. And Josh, I couldn't be more pleased than to have you on tonight with me and to just share these moments. Josh, thank you for being on with us this evening.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Amen. And now, friend, I want you to know this, that right now you're thinking about what you saw. Don't let it slip from your mind. Josh shared with us his heart. He's told his story and his wife Sarah's story. Tonight, I want you to think about, what is God doing with you? I want you to tune in next week as we have more episodes of what God is doing around the world on this missionary moment that we share together on our online missions conference. Until next week, may God richly bless you.